Welcome to What I Meant to Say, where we discuss parenting, relationships, and wisdom that can be passed down through generations. Today we are talking to Paul Zolman, international best-selling author, father of 8, and love language linguist, and we talk about how to be love in the world to elevate your relationships, parenting, and life. So tell me, how did you become a love language linguist, and where did you start with learning about the love languages?
It's a good question, Wendy, and I really didn't start with the love languages at all. I was taught, in my youth, I was taught the language of anger. The language of anger is name calling, putting other people down, just making people smaller so that you'll appear bigger, all that sort of thing. Just all the put downs, talking over people. It was an angry culture. All the humor was angry, all the vocabulary is angry, and I learned that growing up. I thought there's got to be a better way. And as I'm growing up, at age 17, every 17 or 18-year-old, when they get in high school, either junior or senior year of high school, they always make that declaration: I'm going to be a better parent than my parents were. I'm not going to do this, well, what my parents did. And I also made that declaration, but I found myself actually falling back into that generational thing that you talked about, something that I don't know how many generations it was passed down, but that anger was passed down. And what it looked like, Wendy, was that we'd stack annoyance on top of annoyance on top of annoyance, doing that stacking effect until there was just something, could have been very small, that straw that broke the camel's back that would cause the flash of anger. But it was that stacking of annoyances that really annoyed me, and I wanted to overcome that. And so looking to the love languages is what helped me become that love language linguist. I know them backwards and forwards now, and that's why I call myself a love language linguist.
Yeah, that makes so much sense, and I'd love to take that back a little bit to, what it felt like in a house and why you think people create that culture of anger. I know it feels to me like nobody wants to intentionally be angry. But how do you think, generationally speaking, that happens in a household?
That's a good question, Wendy, and I don't know that anyone's ever asked me that question, so I really like questions that are unique like that. And I think that from me, it may have been a standpoint of control. Maybe they feel like things were out of control, so they have to step in and then they mandate, or more of a dictatorial type approach. They have to have control over a situation, and then they start yelling and they start doing those things that angry people do to just try to get back control of the situation. And what really happens is that they lose control in trying to get control.
Yeah. And there's not really safety in that parent-child relationship, which to me, I have 4 kids, and that's one thing that I've really realized over the years is creating safety with your kids doesn't come from a sense of control, because truthfully, we have so little control over so many things, right? But that creating that safety can't happen in those spaces when there's so much anger and shame and guilt and all of those low vibrational energies. And the love languages do seem like something that could pull you out of those places and continue to raise consciousness in a household. So
it's a knee-jerk reaction, Wendy, and I'm glad you brought that up, because it really is whatever we learn from our parents, it's going to be kind of a knee-jerk reaction for us throughout our lives. And so to change that generational thing, you almost have to have a paradigm shift. You have to have a point of crisis that would help you change that shift. And it came for me probably several times throughout my life, but most pronouncedly probably about 15 years ago. This anger actually, just those annoyances to the flash of anger, and that pattern happened both in public and in private, and it probably was contributory to the demise of my first marriage. So after 23 and a half years and 8 children, we parted ways. I had primary custody of the remaining 5 children, and when it was her weekend, I would for the kids, I would have the opportunity to do something kind of like for a midlife crisis. I decided I wanted to do destination dating. And so I wanted to see what could I do to improve myself? What could I do to see if there's a way to find something that, or find a pattern of a way that I could recognize what I wasn't seeing already. And as I'm destination dating, I actually found someone that I got serious with. It was someone actually that didn't come from destination dating so much as it was a referral from my sister. She had a neighbor, but my sister and I at the time lived 7 hours away. I was in Phoenix, she was in St. George, and I told her I'd done a year and a half of destination dating and said, "Sister, I don't want to do that." And she's an older sister. I'm number 10 of 11 children.
Oh my
And
goodness.
and my grandfather had 19 children. So generationally, we're getting better, Wendy. 19 children to 11 children to 8 children. My kids are only having 3 children. I want more grandchildren. How do I do that? And that's yet another problem we can talk about a different day, but I want more grandchildren. Anyway, so I'm dating this woman that my sister introduced me to. It's time we get serious. It's time for big brother approval. Number 10 of 11 children, I always have to have big brother, big sister approval. And so I take her up to my brother's house 300 miles north, and first thing that happened, we go in, my sister-in-law pulls her aside and says, the only emotion that the Zolman family learned growing up was anger. At first I denied it, said, then it made me mad. Why would she say something to a person I was dating? And I was angry about that, and I just actually really proved her point. Is what I did.
So do you think she was just trying to keep it real in that moment, or
Oh, that's a really good question. I've never really thought about it, but the way I took it was that if that's the perception that outsiders have of the Zolman family, she's an in-law, if that's what they had, then other people had that perception as well. And it was just kind of like radio advertising. If one person believes that way, there'll be others that believe that way as well. And so I thought, if that's the perception, I have an opportunity right here and now to change that perception. And so that's the tack that I took from that comment. Didn't analyze why she was saying it or anything else. Mm-hmm. I said, well, I did the Lord is it I type thing of that, Jesus at the Last Supper said, one of you is going to betray me. And all the disciples said, Lord is it I. And I've incorporated that kind of into my repertoire of things that I ask myself, is it me in this relationship that is causing this problem? And that, I get information from time to time, just inspiration, just feelings that, I should do this or I should do that to improve my circumstance and my situation, as I've tried to wrestle with these problems that I've had over the years. And just little by little, I've been getting information and realized that I need to improve myself. If I want a really solid relationship, I really have to make myself a little bit better person. Try to move from that spectrum of anger, where I was in that part of the stick, over to the spectrum of love, and find out what love is all about. So I started reading the Color Code and the Love Languages, 5 Love Languages by Dr. Gary Chapman. And I really settled on the principles of the 5 Love Languages, because they resonated with me. I could relate to them. I understood those, but I didn't understand his application. You mean, Dr. Chapman, if I guess what Wendy's love language is and cater to Wendy, we're going to be buddies? I'm a bad guesser, Dr. Chapman, and it's not worked for me up until this time. And so why would it work now? So that was a bad choice. It just wasn't working for me to guess what people's love language is. And the other option that Dr. Chapman has is in his book, he said, well, if I take this survey, I can find out what my love language is. Well, what the heck am I supposed to do with that, Dr. Chapman? Advertise? Hello, Wendy, I'm Gifts. What do you have for me today? Maybe I should just wear a badge that says I'm Gifts. Here's my Venmo QR code. Send it over. I mean, how crass is that? It's just awkward. And I didn't want to be doing awkward. So I thought, I remember, even as dysfunctional as our childhood was, growing up, that games brought our family together. And I thought, I wonder if I can make this a game. So I contacted Dr. Chapman and emailed him and asked him if he was licensing those little icons that he had for each one of the love languages. And his attorney wrote back after a couple of weeks and said, no, we're not doing that right now. But I had a friend that was a copyright or intellectual property attorney here in my neighborhood, and went over and talked to him about my idea. He said this. He said, theory, like the love language theory, is not copyrightable. Application is. So they weren't doing it as a game. So it kind of gave me permission to be able to take that theory and apply it and make it a game. So that's what I did. I created a cube that has the love languages on it. You'll see I'm holding up the love language of touch right there. Just two hands that are reaching out, touching one another. The next love language would be a hand holding a gift. You'll notice every one of these icons has a little hand on it, and that's purposeful because I realized that I can't bid love to come my way, but I can give it away. Therefore, the outstretched hand to give it away. Here's an icon holding an hourglass. The hourglass represents time, so that's the love language of time. This looks like a waiter holding a platter, outstretched hand providing service, and then two hands together forming a heart with a little conversation flower that would represent the words. 5 love languages, 6 sides on the cube. The last side I created actually is a hand with a question mark. So Wendy, there's just 2 instructions. You just roll the die every day, whatever it lands on, that's the love language you practice giving away within your power all day that day, all day to everybody. I was single when I created this, so I didn't have a significant other like Dr. Chapman suggests. Do this with your significant other. I didn't have anybody. I said, well, Dr. Chapman, who in the heck am I supposed to love? And it just dawned on me, oh, well, I get to love everybody.
Yeah.
For me, Wendy, it was perfect. I needed a replacement behavior that was consistent enough that it actually would replace that behavior that I had of being annoyed until I had that flash of anger. So what the replacement was, and the mindset was that instead of focusing on what's wrong with that person and saying what's wrong with you, instead of saying that or even thinking that and focusing on that maybe 10 to 20% of the faults or the mistakes or the misgivings of that person, I had a paradigm shift that changed that focus to what's right with that person. What can I love about that person? Now I'm looking at the 80 to 90% of that person that is intrinsically good and watching for those type of things that I can compliment, those type of things that I can just not really embellish, but just show that person how good they are and just focus on that. And by doing that, it really changed my whole mindset. I didn't have any time anymore. I was so busy looking for what's right about people because there was so much good out there. I forgot to be annoyed. And it absolutely replaced the behavior of stacking to be angry. And now the stacking is kindness on top of kindness, on top of kindness, on top of kindness. These became the basics for me, Wendy, to get to those higher levels of love. The compassion, the charity, the mercy, intimacy, the forgiveness, the empathy or sympathy. Those are all higher laws of love. These lower laws of love, the love languages, are basics. These are the stair steps that will get you there.
That is such a beautiful reframe and climb out of a place of, real generational pain. And I see so often, and I've seen, I've been through a divorce too, and it's a really painful time. And people, it is a rock bottom and a catalyst for a lot of people to look at how we can change. How did we get here? I know I've done a lot of that type of reflection myself. And the concept when people go out looking for the next relationship of how, a lot of times if we're not conscious, we repeat our patterns. Mm-hmm. And what you're describing is the way out of repeating a pattern and being love. And then looking, instead of saying what I'm looking for in someone else, how can I be love to someone else?
Exactly.
You see that foundation, it builds an entirely different relationship. And I think unless we're having these conscious conversations about how to be love in this really complicated world, we're doomed to repeat our patterns. So I love this conversation because the gamification of it also can, I mean, that plays to us as adults, but you can play that with kids. You
Oh,
can bring
absolutely.
that into your home as a good parent, as helping your children see how to be love in the world. And that gives me chills because that's how this world changes.
I love, yeah,
Yeah.
it's been life-changing for me too. And one of those things about that angry culture that I noticed too is that there's no boundaries. And so what I realized that for me there was no boundaries, that I could look over that fence and say, what's wrong with that person? But I realized that it was such a relief, Wendy, when I realized that, oh, I don't have to be in charge of that person. I
Isn't that
never
the truth?
I never
Yep.
was. I never was anyway. But the realization that, oh, I don't have to be critical of that person. That person has their own autonomy. They have their own ability to make their own choices, and I don't need to disrupt that. I can offer advice. If they say no, I'm done. That's the end of the conversation. If they ask for advice, I could offer advice, but they have to ask, or I have to be given permission. And that's a boundary line that I did not learn growing up. I've acquired that boundary line only because that's a healthy boundary line that is within the culture of love.
Yeah. That is huge. And these are things that we don't know as we're growing up. And
Mhm.
making these discoveries, and you're married today, correct, too?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And what are the things that you would say you learned through this discovery of the love languages that helped you change from your first marriage to your second?
That's a great question. I think that the introspection, just the ability to drill down and figure out what is it that is really causing the annoyance. And when I realized it was mostly other people, rarely, Wendy, did I ever get annoyed at myself. Well, one day there was time I was annoyed at myself. I got so annoyed at myself, I didn't talk to myself for 3 days.
How did that go?
Yeah, how did that go? Yeah, so it's just one of those things. It's mostly people are annoyed at other people, and
Yeah.
they're hardly ever annoyed at themselves. And that's part of that angry culture, is that you're trying to elevate yourself above other people and put other people down. And when I realized that's what I was doing, then I realized that, you know what, that's not helping me, that's not helping them. This has to be a win-win situation. So as I'm rolling the die, what I'm watching for now is to help to light people up. When people light up, I've discovered what their primary or secondary love language is. No longer, Wendy, do you have to say, excuse me, could we pause this relationship for just a moment while I have you take this survey so I know how to love you? You don't have to do awkward anymore. That's
Yeah.
so awkward. Just watch. Just use your observation skills. And while you're watching for them to light up, number one, you've made their day, and there's great satisfaction in helping people have a better day. You've lifted somebody up, and you can do that 3 to 6 to 10 times a day and just be paid immediately. But that's not what you're looking for. You're sending this love out without any regards of it ever coming back, and trusting the laws of the universe that were in place before you or I were ever born. The law of the harvest, the law of karma, the law of attraction. Any of those laws say basically the same thing, that whatever you send out, eventually it's going to come right back to you. Why are we sending anger out? That's a boomerang that's going to come back, and as that boomerang gains height, it's going to gain great velocity when it starts coming back to you. Try to catch a boomerang that is coming back at that velocity. It'll chop your head off if it's sharp enough. It could really hurt you. So we're not trying to do that at all. We're trying to send love out and just watch people's reaction all day long. Try to make people's day. And as we're doing that, it becomes almost addicting, and just becomes very fun activity to just help people have a better day. They're going to spread
Yeah.
it to their friends. They'll spread it to their circles of influence. I had a great day. This is what happened. And pretty
Yeah.
soon they're helping other people also have a better day.
Yep. I call that the ripple effect. I
Oh, yeah.
love thinking about that. It's just a really great way to view the world. And it's so self-motivating, right? It's not about what we're getting, but when it's just so intrinsically motivating to feel that connection with other people. And I wonder, as a father and a grandfather, what are some of the practical ways that you relate to your kids and your grandkids now with this knowledge that you have?
I slow down a lot right now just because you want to savor those moments when they light up. And I wish I would have done it when the children were small, as they were growing up, and I rushed through it too quickly, I think. And so I'm slowing down quite a bit right now. And it's a great question that you're asking, Wendy. I think that it's just give me reason to pause, give me reason to take a lot more time with each child to savor those moments of when they light up, because those moments may be fleeting. That may be the only bonding moment that they have in the whole day.
Yeah.
That I'm not around all day long, and maybe there's not others that have the same disposition as I do to send out love all day long. I know they're not out there, because there's a lot of rage out there, and there's a lot of hate out there, and there's a lot of it's everywhere. It's in families, it's in the workplace, it's in communities, it's on the road, it's everywhere you go. Everybody has something to be angry about. And instead of having something to be angry about and holding on to that, hold on to the things that are good about people. And there's so much good out there. Focus on that. The media would have you look at the negative, where they report 90% negative, maybe 10%, maybe, I'm being generous, maybe 10% of what's good going on in the world. Just listen to any 30-minute segment of news. It's going to be 90-10 at the least. If you call weather even being good, hopefully they're predicting good weather on that broadcast. But it's just, we want to change that tide. We've got to start reporting what's good about people. What is there that we can love about them? And the best part about this is, I think that there's I don't know if you go to yoga class, but there are many of your listeners.
This morning, I'm a huge yogi.
Oh, good. Well, at the end of the yoga class, they put their hands together. The teacher will say namaste. And namaste is a great language. We're talking about languages, but this is a language that's from India. It's called Sanskrit dialect. That Sanskrit dialect, we get nirvana, we get karma, and we get namaste from it. The Hindu interpretation of namaste is the God in me sees the God in you. Or in other words, the divine in me sees the divine in you. Watch for what's good about other people and refine what's bad about yourself. I think we have that upside down right now, Wendy, that we look for what's bad in other people, and we try to say, well, I'm a lot better than that. And we think what's good in us. We've just got to flip that and say, it's not about us. It's about them. And it's about the goodness that they have. What goodness are they offering society? Focus on that. Talk about that. Tell them about it. Tell them that you noticed it. And that's going to light up their day. It's all about them now. It's not really about us.
It's so true. I mean, if we could just spread that culture, it really would change the world. And I think, a lot of us, it takes me to this place because you really do attract what you put out, right? I mean, if you are love, you will attract love. But, I think a lot of people find themselves in positions where they can be taken advantage of, right? If you are, and not so much in an everyday coffee shop situation, like having a conversation with the barista at Starbucks, but if you have people in your life where you're practicing this and maybe it's not coming back, are there ways to protect yourself in situations where you're giving and that maybe the same is not coming back in return?
That's a great question, Wendy. And I'm going to just answer it this way. That reciprocation in my mindset, in this new mindset, actually is a transaction. And I don't think love's a transaction at all. It's not let's make a deal, and it's not a reality show. So if you're looking for reciprocity, you're actually looking for the wrong thing in that regard. And you've got to change that mindset that you're sending it out, seriously sending it out, I don't expect this ever to come back. I'm sending this love out just because that's who I am. And you weave that into your own fabric of your own character, that this is who you are, that you're a loving person, that you're sending this out without any regards. You can watch for people that just are takers and stay away from those type of people that are just taking or just absolutely not responding. Only associate with those people that actually respond. If they're not
Mhm.
ever going to respond to the love that you're sending out, find someone that will. Find someone that actually will light up when you send love out. They're understanding what you're sending. One of the best things that's happened to me is that by sending this love out and becoming that love language linguist, that I know the love languages backward and forwards. Now I have the vision or the ability to be able to see the love coming my way. Most people can only see what they like, Wendy. They
Oh,
only
that's
see,
huge.
yeah, they only see their primary love language. This gives you that peripheral vision that, oh, they're loving on me. It's not my primary love language, but I see they're loving on me. They're really trying. I can respond to that. This gives you that ability to close that communication gap that could have been really a huge fissure in any type of relationship. It could have alienated people within a relationship if you don't understand what love is coming from that other person. But it's nice to know what they like and watch for them to light up. I felt like that survey from Dr. Chapman almost put people in a box. Like, Wendy, you're going to have to eat tacos every day for the rest of your life. That's all I'm going to feed you because that's your love language. That's what you like, right? No, and the diet makes it a little bit more random like that, provides that variety to the day that now you're sending out all different kinds of love languages and you're just watching. People like me that grew up in an abusive situation, if physical touch, if you weren't whacked, you weren't feeling loved. So as I move away from that type of understanding, that's all I knew. As I move away from and find out the different other love languages, I'm more of a words guy. I really like the word.
Mhm.
And this will give you that exploratory type of adventure that you're looking for in love, that you'll find out what is it that you really like. And you can move away from what was abusive before.
Yeah, I think that is it's such a amazing paradigm shift. And
Mm.
I think it's a hard conversation sometimes to have with kids or teenagers, kids that are coming through divorced families. Like, it's
Mhm.
a really big pain point out there. I've parented my kids through that, and there's so many, the divorce rate is so high. And how do you think, or what's the best way to go about having that conversation with your kids about creating generational healing and ridding ourselves of the shame that comes with the mistakes or just our patterns from the past?
That's a really good question, Wendy. And I think that we really need to focus on the individual. Everybody's different. And I think that if we think that we're going to be just like our parents, then obviously that's what's going to manifest itself. But we can think that we can be just a little bit better and just alter things a little bit. I think education is a huge part of it. For that piece, what I'm doing is I'm taking this cube and putting it in the classrooms just as a test in some schools in the area. And as I'm testing it, they're rolling the die at the beginning of the day. The teacher, maybe for 30 or 45 seconds, is saying, class, this is the type of behavior that we're looking for today. And I'm just testing it K-6 right now in the younger ages. And it's very critical, especially in those ages, in the divorces of the children of divorce cases in that area. It really is something that these kids can latch onto because they're learning the love languages. They're learning how to be decent human beings. So at the end of the day, what happens is I've created a journal page that will say what they rolled, what opportunities they saw to love in that way, and what they did about those opportunities. It's an opportunity for that child to learn responsibility. They are responsible for their own actions. Their parents aren't responsible. It's not the teacher, it's not the principal of the school that's responsible for their actions. They become responsible for their own actions every single day. And teaching that responsibility is a huge thing that's going to help these children, regardless whether they're primary school, secondary school, high school, whatever level they're at. They need to know the responsibilities on them. Stop blaming your parents. Stop blaming. I blamed my father for what happened to me until I was about age 35. Stop that and quit it. You're not going to make any progress by blaming someone else. You're not going to go worse. You're not going to get any better. You can't really make that self-actualization until you say, I'm responsible for my own actions. When you get to that point and say, I'm responsible for my own actions, that's the only time that you can change. And that's the only time you can set goals to which way do you want to go? You want to become more angry? Most people don't. Become more loving. And this is a tool that will help you. You know, the carpenter has their tools, the pianist has their tools. Everybody's got their tools. This is a love tool that can help you be a more decent human being, and do it every single day.
Yeah, it's so great. And consistency and routine is such a huge part of long-term sustainable change and success. And I love that about the consistency of this game. And there's a couple of things that are coming to mind. One, I love you getting it into K-6 because that is such a foundational age to teach before the insecurities of teenage life and high school. And it's like, imagine when you're sending that mentality into junior high and high school. That makes so much sense to me from just a parenting point of view. And educationally, it's so great to hear that you're doing that.
Well,
and
I think it's going to tamp down a lot of the misbehaving. If they're responsible, they have to write about it at the end of the day. Oh my heck, I've got to write about this. And then the teacher will take those great stories and read them the next day in front of the class. Look what Johnny did yesterday. Look what Susie did yesterday. And all the class said, well, I want to be like that. I want to do something like that. I want to be get that attention in front of the class. Some people won't, but there might be those that do, and they're going to just step up to the plate. They're going to be better the next day, just 1% better each day. That's all we're looking for. Just be a little bit better, a little bit more loving, and learn all the love languages. If they can learn these basics, then they can have that springboard to those higher laws. You have to do kindness on top of kindness on top of kindness. Could you imagine insulting, and then expecting intimacy at the end of the day? Seriously?
No.
Really? Come on. Yeah, it's not going to happen.
It's so true. And this idea that as we become love, and I'm thinking about, you saying like you blamed your father till you were 35. The idea as we become more loving and we embody love more and more, didn't you find that you found so much more compassion for where other people are coming from?
Absolutely. And that's what I'm talking about. Use these love languages, the basic love language, as stair steps to get to those higher laws of that compassion. It's going to be a natural result. You're not focused on compassion. You're focused on building the basics to get to that level, and it'll happen automatically. It'll just be a natural sequence of something that's going to happen. But what's next? And that'll be next.
Yeah, it's amazing thing to watch and see. And the other thing I'm thinking about is if you don't have this knowledge of all the different love languages, I think, or have you noticed that people are, even if they have a basic knowledge of how they love, they're more inclined to probably communicate in that style and ignore the other ways. So do we lead with what our most fundamental love languages usually?
I think naturally people do, Wendy, but the whole idea of the game is to move away from that. Let's become versed in all the love languages so that we're better communicators, so that we can just tamp down any road rage. Oh, they might be in a hurry. Maybe just let it go, and just let it go. Don't worry about it. Don't worry that they made a mistake while they're driving. They didn't put their blinker on, of all things. I mean, just don't worry about that. Just worry about stay in your lane. What can you do? And when I realized all that about staying in my lane, I realized the only thing I have control over is sending love out and then responding when it comes my way. I can't bid love to come my way. Even if Dr. Chapman says, well, if you take this test, tell somebody what you are so that they can know. Well, that creates unintended pity parties that, oh, I told you how to love me. Why aren't you doing it? And it's just, you don't want that little whiny voice to get ever into your system because you told someone how to love them. Watch, use your observation skills, and just love in the way that's going to light people up. When you light someone up, you take that mental note for that person. That's what they like, and just wash, rinse, repeat. Do that over and over again. I think that that's what's really going to just improve society, improve relationships, improve the family relationships, the community, the neighborhood, the city, the state, the nation, the world. And that's, we've got to start where we're at.
Yeah, it's so true. And in this world of, it is all connected. I say that all the time.
Mhm.
And, human connection, I'm so passionate about it. And I think that that's something in the world, like we can use technology to really still feel that, but we're also, there's a detrimental side to how much content is out there, how many platforms, how many things that we can disconnect from. And if we can keep coming back to this foundation of love and human connection, we can use all of those things to our advantage to elevate this message. And you mentioned, how negative the news cycle is. And that's what drew me to the podcast world, because I really do think that that's where there's so much wisdom out there in the podcast circuit that's not on the everyday news. And so that's what I think, there's a lot of consciousness being driven that way because of the negativity out there. So for all the reasons we have to be pessimistic, I more and more see people really wanting to feel that change, because there is a loneliness epidemic out there. And it's conversations like this and games like yours that can really make a change. And really it is one to one, we can, and then let that ripple effect happen.
Absolutely. I love that
Yeah.
too, Wendy. I absolutely agree that there's a loneliness epidemic out there. But the best way that I've found to get out of loneliness, I've been single and just been alone several times, and it's no fun. It's really not fun at all. But the way to get out of that doldrum, the way to get out of that depression, is not to sit at home and wait for somebody to knock on the door and say, "I love you." The best thing to do is you be the person. You go down the street. I guarantee you're going to find someone that's lower than you are, someone that you can raise up, someone that you can uplift for that day. Then that's going to help you as well. I love the song in The Sound of Music where Rolf's a little delivery guy, and he's in love with Maria on Trap, and one time he rides his bike, parks it on the lawn, and he's singing. Maria's on the second story at her window, and he's singing. And part of the lyrics of that song say, "Love in the heart wasn't put there to stay. Love isn't love till it's given away." And I really believe that we need to give that love away. We can find those downtrodden right in our own neighborhood. We can find someone that is just a little bit lower than we are, lift them up and help them have a better day. When you do that, there's great satisfaction in doing that. You'll want to do it again and again and again. It's not an event. It's not a one-time. It's not checking the box off. This is something that, as it gets ingrained and woven into your own character, it's going to make you who you are, that loving person. And people will want to come to you for that love, and they'll want to come and watch for you. How are you going to handle this situation? They're gonna come to you, and they'll just come unabated. Maybe you don't want that fame. Maybe you don't want that type of attention at all, but do it quietly. There's a lot of ways and a lot of people out there sending love out quietly. And that's my favorite way. Just do it very quietly.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think there's something that's so grounding about that. And it really does help people feel that emotional safety that they need to feel in the world to be able to be themselves. And I think that is truly the most beautiful thing you can give somebody. Because if this world was operating from, we were more able to operate as our authentic selves all the time, everything gets better. And one thing I'm thinking about though is like you're a man in this world. And I think to be a man that embodies love, and I think it's harder for men out there these days to really it feels to me, and I could be wrong, but it feels to me like as women, we sit around and talk about this stuff and connect on a more intimate basis. But do you have advice for men out there on how to really be love in the world that's specific to being a man?
Wendy, that's really a great question. I don't know how to answer that, except that I was born number 10 of 11. I have an older sister and I have a younger sister, so I'm the bologna between the two pieces of white bread there. And I'm a thorn between two roses, as some people say. All the rest were brothers. So I actually worked on developing that right brain, that softer side, from the get-go. And I did not want to get in trouble with my father at all. So I really focused on trying to stay within the lines. He was very attentive to women. In fact, he took my mother out. I don't know how he did it because I had not been able to duplicate that. I love that about my father, that he took my mother out every single Friday night. He wasn't very creative about it, but still he took my mother out every Friday night. If I even looked cross-eyed at my sisters, I'd be in trouble. So I tried to value women and take care of women the very best I can. And I would give that advice to any other man out there. Just these women will take care of you if you take care of them. And I can't give you any better advice. Take care of the women in your life. Take care of them, and just do what needs to be done to help them on their way. Help them have a happy day. Help them have joy in their surroundings. Help them have the girls' trips that they need. Just foster their growth. And if you'll foster their growth, they'll take care of you forever. But just make it about them rather than about yourself. It really shouldn't be about you anyway. Make it about them, and your life's going to be so much happier.
Yeah. It keeps coming back to that circle of how, we were able to feed each other, which is
Absolutely.
It's really beautiful. There's a question I ask everybody that comes on my podcast, and then it's just a look back over our lives. And the question is, what's a piece of advice that you would give to your younger self?
My younger self, I would say, get your education a little earlier than I did. It took me 22 years to get a college degree. My father only graduated from 8th grade. And as advice to my younger self, I would say, just speed up your educational process, get as much education, and really not only education in secular things, but religious things as well. Get educated in those things that really are meaningful. Things that I started moving and gravitating toward things that didn't change as much. So learning about things like, when I was 17, I took a career test and they said I'd be a really good IRS agent. That's because I was brought up so strict and wanted to keep those rules so I would not get in trouble, get beat by my dad. I wanted to keep those rules. And he said, people hate IRS agents. I don't want to be hated. And it's just I didn't do that, but instead I went into accounting. And I would say that if the advice I'd give to my younger self was just get some education, get a well-rounded education, and that education, especially in relationships, because you can't know about everything about a relationship, but you can know enough about relationships to understand the workings of men and women. Don't try to read people. Don't try to read their minds. Listen and ask them for clarification. Don't try to make their choices for them. Just try to stay in your lane and try to do what you can do within your own power and then allow others the same gratuity of allowing them to make their own choices. I think that the younger me would have empowered my children a whole lot more. They are very powerful, very, very good citizens, very good fathers, very good mothers of their children as well right now. I'm very proud of my children because of what they've done. And so as far as the strictness, I don't know that I'd be any much different than that. But as far as the kindness, I think I could have been a whole lot more kind.
Wow. That's some insight that is really cool to hear from somebody that's been through the parenting journey. And I always say, I don't believe in experts in parenting. And as many children as you have, the ones I have, they're all so different.
Mm-hmm.
But that concept of weaving the kindness and the love
Mm-hmm.
through a framework that really empowers them with virtue and discipline and all of those things like that. I mean, it's foundational. And there's a quote in, I love the book that Matthew McConaughey wrote, and it says, conservative early, liberal late. And it's always about giving them that foundation of, there are rules that make and virtues that make life function better. But then once you have those down, you're able to see the shades of gray that happen with being human. And then we can have compassion for each other when we come to those places in life. And there's so much of that in your story. So
thank you. Yeah. It's it really is a story that I like my story as well. I wouldn't trade for anything. I think it's really helped me throughout my life.
Yeah. So where can people find you if they want to get a hold of the game and the journals and all of that? What's the best place to get a hold of that?
Great question, Wendy. They can get a hold of me at rolloflove.com, ROLE of love. It's kind of a play on words. ROLL is what you do outside of you. You roll the dice outside. Change happens within. ROLE of love.com. And they can get the book, the journal, and the dice all in a package for $29.99 right now. It's on sale probably until Valentine's Day. So we'll just allow that to happen. It's a whole lot less than even one therapy session. So take advantage of it right now.
Absolutely. Well, this is great. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I can't wait to get this out there. I have so many teacher friends and parents that, man, that would be a great addition to a classroom or a family. So thank you for what you do. And thanks for joining me today.
Absolutely, Wendy. It's been a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you for joining us on What I Meant to Say, another production of Inspired Edutainment brought to you by Be Better Media.